Doflamingo, let's get something straight. You can take over the Dressrosa Kingdom. You can turn the citizens into toys. You can trap everyone in a massive razor-wired bird cage. But when you shoot Moosey, now you're crossing a line. This week's episode of One Piece I honestly thought was pretty good. It went by real quick and a lot of little events went down. What I really loved about this one, and this is very surprising, I never even talk about this that much, but this episode had one of the best cliffhanger to-be-continued screens that I have seen in One Piece. It was so tense. We are finally starting to get into Trafalgar Law's backstory, and they did a great job of showing it off at the very end of this episode. But first, let's talk about some of the highlights. If you guys remember last week's episode, Law and Luffy were trapped in this underground tunnel, and Doflamingo was walking down the hallway getting ready to destroy them. And he has this weird ability where he can shoot string bullets, and he actually ends up shooting Moosey. And it's awful! It's so messed up. Luckily, Luffy is able to attack, and then they get a little help from Jeet and Abdullah, who actually end up cutting right through him, but we realize it's actually just a Doflamingo clone. Big shock there. That's when Luffy decides to make a big flashy exit by using his elephant gun technique and blasting through the ground, meeting his other fellow friends who are getting ready to go and kick Doflamingo's ass. We also get some more action between Fujitora and Sabo, which is honestly pretty freaking awesome. I really liked the choreography during that fight scene. It's just as intense as it was in the previous episode, if not more so. I especially like the fact that Sabo is actually still using his pipe in battle in conjunction with his fire abilities. I also really loved that one scene where Fujitora used that one gravity technique where he had this huge wave of energy just going through the ground, blasting through, destroying everything in its path, and then Sabo was able to block it with one of his big techniques. Then right after that, we get some more suplexing from frickin' Senor Pink and Frankie. And let's not forget Bartolomeo, who in this week's episode decides to help out the team, not by using his barrier technique, because since he's flying with the Beatles, he can't cross his fingers. Instead, he decides he's going to wiggle his ass around, take his pants down, and give all of the soldiers below a nice golden shower. But my favorite part about this week's episode, despite the fact that there was some cool action scenes, is the final scene where we get to learn a little bit more about Trafalgar Law's past and how he met Doflamingo. And they really make Trafalgar Law seem like he was a real devious little bastard when he was a kid. And there's a scene at the very end of the episode where a young Trafalgar Law confronts Doflamingo and his family, and he is strapped with grenades and ready to just kill everyone. He wants to destroy everything because he has nothing left to lose. He claims to be from this village, which we don't really know too much about quite yet, but we'll get into that with some backstory very soon. This is all coupled with this great tense music, which is kicking in as Luffy and Trafalgar Law are trying to fight Doflamingo. Doflamingo is remembering his past. To be continued screen, and it is glorious. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of One Piece? This was a really good one right here. I thought it was going to be a real slow episode because for the most part, the first half is real simple. It's just Doflamingo attacking a little bit. You find out it's the clone and Luffy escapes. But right after that, we got the Fujitora and Sabo stuff, and it was awesome. Probably the best animation that you'll see from this week's episode. Frankie and Senor Pink is hilarious because they just continuously keep suplexing each other, and it's only going to get crazier from there. The big thing about this episode is obviously the stuff with Trafalgar Law. I'm really glad that we're finally getting ready to get into that backstory because it's going to be very intense. And it's really, jarring to see that other side of Trafalgar Law, the one that we don't really see anymore. He's really evolved since then because of the character of Corazon, who, again, we're going to learn about very soon. On the technical side of things, this week's episode actually looked pretty good for the most part. There were a few standout action scenes that were good, and that final shot at the end with Trafalgar Law and Doflamingo I thought was really cool. I love the use of black and white. It looked really awesome, and I just can't wait to see how that story is going to evolve. Otherwise, this was just a fun, good episode of One Piece that moved the story along just a little bit. We got some cool action scenes, and there's still a lot more to go. So One Piece fans, get excited. We got some backstory coming up, a few big fights, and a few other things that, frankly, I just can't talk about because I don't want to spoil anything. So I'm going to give this week's episode a 4 out of 5. Make sure to tell me what you thought about this week's episode in the comments section below. Thank you guys for watching my review. Make sure to like it, share it with all your friends, subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and make sure to check us out on social media. Thank you guys again for watching, and as always, stay dandy, baby.